The abyss. That's what engulfed me when I discovered my wife's betrayal. It was as if the very essence of my life had vanished, leaving only emptiness in its wake. The woman I trusted with everything, whom I loved and relied on, had callously deceived me. Now, I must navigate through this turmoil. I closed the suitcase with a solemn click, casting a final glance around the bedroom with a heavy sigh. The new sleigh bed, once a symbol of our renewal, now felt like a cruel reminder. She could have it all. I was leaving her in good stead. The house, paid off and desired more by her than by me, was hers to keep. Our children's college funds were nearly secured. Joe had stumbled through his early university days but had recently shown promise. His reinstatement eligibility had arrived, prompting me to release funds from his educational trust. Perhaps the setback had taught him a valuable lesson. Meanwhile, my daughter's excellent GPA reflected newfound determination. Carol and I had clashed over tough love for Joe, but I stood firm. College was meant to be a maturing experience, and he needed to understand consequences. I smirked grimly, knowing Carol was about to learn a similar lesson. Retrieving my phone, I printed a photo captured earlier that evening, Carol in a close embrace with another man. Placing the picture, my wedding band, and my lawyer's card on the table, I shrugged into my jacket and exited the house for the last time. I had been on the road for about 2 hours when my phone rang. I knew I would have to talk to her eventually, but now was not the right time, so I put it on vibrate. I had a new job in South Carolina. My boss was surprised when I accepted the position and even more surprised when I asked if I could go down early. I planned to take a day to find a place and a couple of days to introduce myself to the team. The previous plant manager had left everything in a mess, so I was coming in as a savior. I expected a lot of long days at first, but that was fine with me since I didn't plan on being a social butterfly anytime soon. At 46 years old, I was still in pretty good shape. It was a shame I still loved my wife. Hopefully, that would fade with distance and time. Until then, I had enough work to keep me busy. Time would tell. I stopped at a truck stop to refuel and take a break. I planned to get a hotel at the next exit and finish the trip tomorrow. I had just taken a swig of my Diet Pepsi when the phone vibrated again. It didn't seem like she was giving up. Now was as good a time as any, I guess. I slid my finger across the screen and answered. "Hello, this is Joseph," I said. "Joe, what the hell is going on?" came the voice on the other end. "Where did you get this picture? Why is your wedding ring on the table? And most importantly, where the hell are you?" "Hey, Carol. I got the picture earlier tonight at the Red Horse Saloon. My ring is on the table because it means nothing to me anymore, and I am about 10 hours away from Charleston, South Carolina," I replied. "Wait, what doesn't mean anything? South Carolina? Joe, what the hell is going on?" she sputtered. I sighed. "Carol, I found out that the past 2 weeks you haven't been going to Sherry's like you told me. Instead, you've been going to the Red Horse for drinks. Given our history, I followed you last week and saw you slow dancing with the guy in the picture. When the boss mentioned a promotion in South Carolina, I jumped at the chance. I went to the lawyers and arranged a settlement that I believe is more than generous. It occurred to me that maybe I misinterpreted what I saw, so I followed you again tonight and saw you slow dancing with the same guy. I probably should have talked to you about it last week, but frankly, I was just too hurt. You're lying about where you were made it hard to believe anything you said," I told her. "Joe, that was Mike Leonard from sales, and he is married to Mike Durr," she said quickly. "So is Devin," I replied quietly. There was silence on the other end of the line. I realized I had been holding my breath, so I exhaled and took another sip of my soda. I could hear her breathing heavily. "You haven't mentioned that name in over 5 years. I thought we were past that," she said cautiously. "I thought we were too, But seeing you sneaking around behind my back and meeting another guy at a bar brought everything back to the surface. I can't go through this again, Carol. Your affair with Devin nearly broke me. I can't endure it a second time. The kids are settled now. The house is paid off. With your salary, I can walk away if I just give you the house. Our credit card debt is minimal, and I'll pay it off. I have a new job, and they're providing a furnished apartment for me for the first year. There's no need to make this difficult. Go to my lawyer and pick up the papers. If you don't collect them this week, I'll have them served to you. Review them with your attorney, and you'll see it's a fair deal. If you sign, we can be done with this in 6 months and move on with our lives. A clean break is best, I said wearily. Joe, nothing happened between Mike and me. Sherry was there, and you know she wouldn't let anything bad happen. I know it looks bad, and I'm kicking myself for lying to you. Come back, and we can talk about this. I can explain everything, she said urgently. Carol, it doesn't matter even. If your dancing could cure his cancer, I'd still be moving on. You think you understand the pain and suffering I endured because of you and Devin, but you have no idea. It's the lying, Carol. Nothing good could come from a relationship where you felt the need to lie to me. I would think you want to end this marriage, then you can drink and dance without worrying about a jealous husband at home. I know I probably haven't made it easy for you to do whatever you want, but now you can, I said with a hint of bitterness. Joe, that's not fair. All I've ever wanted was to be with you. Even when I was being stupid with Devin, I never wanted to leave you. I was emotionally and hormonally messed up, and he took advantage of that. You know this, we went through months of counseling to get through it, she cried. Do I know that, Carol? I know what you told me, what the counselor told me, what the doctor told me. But I also know how I felt when I found out you were dancing with another guy at a bar. I know how I felt when you lied to me again about your whereabouts. And let's talk about fair, shall we? How fair was it that I went through the pain of losing a child by myself? I didn't have someone on the side who understood me and was willing to hold and comfort me. How fair was it that I went over a year with only my hand for relief while you were sleeping with some snake oil salesman? You know what? I'm done. Just sign the damn paperwork and let's end this sham of a marriage, I told her in a cold voice. I didn't want to hear her sobbing, so I pressed the button to end the call. Mentally shrugging it off, I tried to regain my previous dispassionate mood. I drove another 35 miles and took an exit with hotels. By the time I fell asleep, I was mostly okay. The next day was a long haul. My phone started buzzing at 7:30 and continued to ring every hour on the half hour. When I stopped for some fast food, I noticed one of the calls was from my daughter. Taking a deep breath, I called her back. Mom said you left her, she greeted me. Yes, I did, honey. She has been lying to me for the past 2 weeks, and I just can't deal with that, I replied. Dad, she said all she was doing was talking, walking, and dancing with a guy who lost his kid. She was just trying to help. She says you misunderstood and took a job in South Carolina without talking to her. Something else is up, so spill, she demanded in her take-charge voice. Honey, you're an adult now, so I'm going to give you some background on where I'm at. When little Casey died, both your mom and I went into a serious depression. You might remember Mom being totally out of it for a long while. Someone had to stay connected enough to the family to keep things going. So I soldier on. I found out that about 4 months after Casey died, your mother started having an affair with a coworker that lasted about 5 months. I suffered alone while she received help and intimacy from someone else. I paused to get my emotions under control. I had no idea. Why did you stay with her? My daughter asked softly. Because I truly loved her, but mostly because the cost of leaving was too high. Divorcing her would have left me broke and only seeing you kids on weekends. you would have had to cope with a broken marriage on top of losing a sibling. I would have had to pay child support, spousal maintenance, hospital bills, and I wouldn't be able to live in the house. She had been on bed rest for 6 months before Casey was born and hadn't returned to full-time work, so her income was almost nothing. I decided the best course was to focus on the family and work on our marriage. To her credit, she said and did all the right things. Plus, I genuinely loved her. But I can't go through that again. Seeing her dance with another man was too painful. Even though they weren't making out, she lied to me, and it all came flooding back. I'm sorry, honey. I really hoped it would work out, but I just can't do it. It might not make sense to anyone else, but the pain last night was as intense as it was 7 years ago, I replied. Damn, Dad, I had no idea. I know we were all really messed up about Casey. I can't believe she did that to you. What a jerk, she said angrily. That's my girl, she's always had her daddy's back. Of course, she had me wrapped around her finger, so it balanced out. Britt, honey, I didn't tell you that to cause any trouble with your mom. I just wanted you to understand that I didn't walk away from her just for a single dance. You're old enough to know that she's your mom and she loves you. What she did to me. So I'm kindly asking you to stay out of it. Focus on your education and remember that you have 2 parents who love you dearly. I promise things will stay civil and we won't drag you or Joe Jr. into it, I said. Yeah, that's not going to happen, Dad, she replied with a hint of a smile in her voice. I need some time to process all this. I'm going to call you later today, and I want you to pick up the phone. I know how you like to disappear when you're stressed, but don't you dare do that to me or Joe, or else we'll find you and camp out on your doorstep. I love you, Daddy, and hang in there, she said as she hung up the phone. I was just leaving Ohio when I saw my son's number appear on my phone. I knew I would have to talk to him eventually, so I decided to answer the call. Dad, she's a mess, he greeted me. Joe Jr. and I had a good, albeit sometimes tense, relationship. I loved him dearly, but we both have strong wills and tend to stand our ground when we think we're right. This led to some intense clashes during his teenage years. Usually, it was Carol who had to step in and calm us both down. She could make him see reason, whereas if I used the same words and tone, it likely would have ended in a physical fight. Don't get me wrong, I love my boy and would go to great lengths for him. We are just very similar. I'm really sorry to hear that, son, I said. She didn't do anything wrong this time, Dad. If you've forgiven her, why are you leaving now? He asked. I was a bit surprised. How did you know about Carol's affair? Did she tell you about it? I didn't think you guys knew, I responded. Years ago, I overheard a phone call where she was talking to that jerk. She was telling him it was over and that she was going to tell you that Friday, he replied. I didn't know what she was talking about, but I figured it was bad when you sent us to Grandma and Grandpa's for the weekend. That Sunday evening was the darkest day I've ever seen in the house. It was even worse than when you came back from the hospital without Casey. After a while, it dawned on me what she'd done. Huh, I had no idea, I said. So, what's the big deal now, Dad? Why are you running? I told her she was an idiot for lying to you, but she didn't do anything. Can't you at least come back and talk to her? You're always telling me to man up and face my problems. Now it just looks like you're being a coward. Joe, maybe I am being a coward, and you can judge me all you want for it. When you're in my position, you can choose your own course of action. Until then, I'll tell you what I told your sister, stay out of my personal life. I can't tell you how proud I am of you for buckling down and getting back into U of D. I'm going to hang up the phone now before either of us says something we'll regret later, I said as I pressed the end call button. Ah, to be young and have all the answers. He brought up a valid point, one I had been avoiding confronting. Why was I suddenly so upset and decisive 7 years after the affair ended? I hadn't even thought about Carol's affair for a couple of years until she began lying to me. I wish I had an answer to that question. The only thing that comes to mind is that perhaps I never truly forgave her. Yet that doesn't quite add up, considering I've been genuinely happy for the past few years. I truly believed I had moved on. Well, maybe I should consider seeing a counselor once I've settled into my new place. I'm not sure how much my previous therapist helped if I'm reacting this strongly now. As I crossed the border into South Carolina, I focused on planning what needed to be done at the new plant to get it up and running, tuning out the incessant buzzing of my phone. 8 months later, today marked a significant moment. I accepted the mail and stared at the large envelope before me. I was finally liberated. I was taken aback by how swiftly she acquiesced. During the phone conversation, she explained that she was assisting him in coping with the loss of the newborn, and the dancing was merely a part of the environment they were in. She mentioned feeling uncomfortable when he asked her to dance, but she complied to avoid causing a scene. The following week, she danced with him once, and that was it. She insisted he wasn't making advances, but it made her uneasy enough to consider quitting social outings altogether. When I questioned why she didn't confide in me or involve me, given that I had undergone a similar experience, she nearly broke down, admitting she feared it would resurface her affair and didn't want to hurt me. She planned to talk to him and encourage him to seek counseling, believing it wasn't a significant issue since others were present. However, I couldn't overlook the deception. Despite reassurances from Carol's friends, Abby, and Mike himself, that nothing happened beyond awkward dancing, I couldn't shake the feeling. I berated myself for holding on to it, but my feelings toward my wife had changed irreversibly. Though I loved her, I no longer desired to be married to her. My new therapist suggested I never truly forgave her, and these unresolved feelings resurfaced, making it impossible for me to move past it. It made sense in a way. Glancing at the envelope, I decided against opening it just yet. Climbing the 2 flights of stairs to my apartment, I sifted through the rest of my mail. The sound of shouting from a hallway caught my attention, and I looked up to see a muscular black man pinning my neighbor Letitia against the wall, yelling in her face. "You can't break up with me. We'll finish when I tell you. Now go to that apartment and put on something attractive." "We're already late for my company," he grumbled as my fist slammed into his side. I know it wasn't entirely fair of me to hit him from behind. But I decided that all was lost when he raised his hand at the woman. I wanted to swing at him again, but suddenly he stood on tiptoe, and my neighbor grabbed him and squeezed him tightly. "Listen here, idiot," she hissed at him. "If you touch me one more time, I'll hurt your instrument. Do you understand?" He was wheezing, tears welling up in his eyes. He nodded frantically, sobbing as she probably squeezed him one last time. She let go of him, and he collapsed to the floor, limping down the hallway. Letitia watched him leave, then leaned against the wall, tears streaming down her face. I squatted down next to her and gently put my hand on her shoulder. "I cook spaghetti and always make too much. Why don't you come in and help me eat some?" I suggested. She nodded, and I helped her to her feet, leading her to my apartment. The company provided me with a nice 3-room apartment within walking distance of the factory. They paid the rent for a year, and I was seriously thinking about staying after that. We didn't have a pool, but we could use the one in the neighboring complex. However, we had a fantastic gym. That's where I first met Letitia, my neighbor. After being here for 2 months, I found myself caught in a cycle of relentless work, often clocking 14 to 16 hours a day, followed by sleep. My doctor warned me that I was a heart attack waiting to happen and advised me to cut back on work, adopt healthier eating habits, and start exercising, the usual doctor's advice. So, I made a decision to cap my workdays at 12 hours and incorporate gym sessions into my routine. Amidst the chaos of work and divorce proceedings swirling in my mind, I discovered that intense workouts helped me momentarily escape. Perhaps it was no different from seeking solace in alcohol, but at least this way, I was sculpting a set of discernible abs instead of nurturing a beer belly. During my post-workout exercises, Letitia often joined me, and we chatted a little. She was wearing a tracksuit that accentuated her attractive figure. Even though her curly hair was pulled back into a ponytail and she wasn't wearing makeup, her face, with rosy cheeks and a radiant smile, exuded an enchanting charm. Her clothes highlighted her cocoa-colored skin just enough to be attractive without becoming vulgar. Letitia, who was in her final year of medical school, received financial support from a modest trust fund. Yet, standing in the hallway of our building, she seemed defenseless, like a young girl in need of help. I poured her a glass of wine and put the water on to boil. I opened a beer and joined her on the couch. She moved closer, snuggling up to me. Sipping her wine, she spoke in an even tone, saying, "My father often bullied my mother. He would pin her against the wall, much like Tyrone did to me, and he was constantly raising his hand at her. I despised my father for this, but I was too scared to intervene. My mother was crying, and I couldn't even muster the courage to tell him to stop. I was terrified when Ty pinned me against the wall. It was only when I saw you behind his back and realized that you had hit him that I was able to think clearly." "Thank you," she said, looking at me with her beautiful brown eyes. "I was glad to do it. Thank you for joining me for dinner." "You'll be the first person I'll have dinner with outside of work," I replied. She smiled and kissed me on the lips. We enjoyed the food, talked, and had a wonderful time. I even got another kiss when she left at midnight. 2 months later, we started a close relationship. It all began quite innocently. Feeling somewhat depressed that I was celebrating my 47th birthday alone, she insisted on inviting me to a bar with her friends. Perhaps she mentioned my mood because 4 women in their 20s had been flirting with me and surrounding me all evening. It was exciting. One of her friends even asked her, "If I please the birthday boy, will you let me participate?" My face turned red with embarrassment. I was just beginning to realize that it was a joke when Letitia intervened. "I'm sorry, girls, but this white boy is going to have dark meat tonight. As soon as I'm done with him, you can take the rest," she announced. Again, I found myself blushing. I was stunned when she approached me, giving me a meaningful look followed by a predatory smile. Letitia stayed by my side until the end of the evening. Overall, it was an amazing night, which has only improved over time. When we arrived home, Letitia did not pretend to go to her apartment. Instead, she lingered at my door until I opened it. Without saying a word, she came in, went straight to my refrigerator, took 2 bottles of water, and closed the door. "Letitia, you've been drinking, and I'm not sure that's a good idea," I replied. "First of all, I've only been drinking water for the last 3 bars, so I'm tipsy but not drunk. Secondly, it's not about feelings but about 2 people who need to satisfy their desires," she declared, continuing her actions. "Why not? What are you talking about?" I thought as we went to the couch. "You belong to me tonight," I said. It was my best night. The rays of dawn streamed through the window, illuminating a beautiful bronze-skinned woman who was stretched out on my pillow. I put my hands by my head, thinking about last night. I got in touch with Letitia. Although she was wonderful, I knew that we had no future. When my children grew up, I had no desire to start all over again, and I was not in love with her. She was my first friend since I moved here, and I wanted the best for her. I was ready to help in any way, but there was no question of a traditional romantic relationship. So what about last night? 2 consenting adults let off steam. I hope she felt the same way. When I looked at her, I saw that she was awake and looking at me. "You're thinking about last night," she said. Yes, I just hope it doesn't ruin our friendship, I replied. Joe, you're amazing, and you're very dear to me, but we both know that we're not destined to settle down together. I want children, a career, all of it. After graduating from the clinic, I will move to wherever my job takes me. You've never shown any interest in starting over with kids and a mortgage, she said, grinning. That's right. I was there. I did it. I smiled back. So that brings us to last night. I liked it, and I would love to repeat it, but if it gets too awkward for you, it can be a one-time thing. Personally, I would prefer that we be friends for our own benefit. There are no obligations. We remain friends, and when we are in the mood, we enjoy each other's company. What do you say? What is it? She asked. I have never encountered a situation where friends receive benefits before. I wasn't sure what to do about it, except that it seemed like we were both on the same wavelength. Here I am, a 47-year-old man who has been in a serious relationship for the past 25 years. It seemed to me that I was being offered something extraordinary. I decided to stick to a more youthful mindset and act like I was 27, not 47. I doubt it'll be easy for you to get to me from this side of the bed, I quipped. She looked at me, and I was afraid that I had said something wrong. Then she laughed and moved closer. After the morning meeting, Letitia made it clear that we were no exception. Joe, I'm going to be busy at school and maybe eventually start dating other guys. I expect to see a few women walk out your door in disgrace. Okay? You're too good a guy to waste your life moping at home. Live. Just do something. You have a great body, a full head of hair, and such a hoarse voice. Be selfish and treat yourself. That's what I did. I sat down and compiled a list of things I had longed to do but couldn't due to family obligations. At the top of the list was purchasing a motorcycle. When I visited the dealership, they advised me to enroll in a safety course. It was a weekend session costing $85, comprising written and skills assessments. Upon completion, I'd receive a card enabling me to obtain my endorsement from the DMV, plus a discount on insurance. Armed with my new license, I browsed the pre-owned section of the local Harley shop. The price of a new Harley and the waiting list were daunting, and nothing caught my eye. Just as I was leaving, the salesperson approached me. He mentioned a lady from our riding group who had recently acquired her ex-partner's bike through a divorce settlement. It was in excellent condition and seemed to align with what I was seeking. He offered to provide me with her contact information. I agreed and dialed the number, finding myself en route to the north side of the city within a couple of hours. I didn't know what to expect, but it certainly wasn't this. The houses here had to be valued at $3 to $4 million. I drive a 3-year-old F-150 that I meticulously maintain, but I could tell I was way out of my league. It was a gated community, and the guard directed me to the address. Pulling up, I spotted a gorgeous Harley in the driveway. The garage was open, revealing what seemed like a duplicate of the bike parked next to a newer Lexus. The very atmosphere exuded wealth. The woman who greeted me was nothing short of impressive. She was impeccably put together, with the perfect combination of hair, attire, perfume, and posture. I was taken aback. Approaching me with confidence, she extended her hand. "Hello, you must be Joe." "I'm Connie, and this is my ex-husband's bike," she said as we shook hands. This woman stood out. She exuded professionalism and determination yet maintained a warmth and charm that was instantly likable. I found myself captivated not only by her appearance but also by her demeanor. My ingrained politeness kicked in, coupled with the years of professionalism gained from boardroom experiences. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Connie." "Thank you for accommodating my short-notice visit to see the bike," I responded. "Taylor at the shop mentioned you seemed like a genuine customer rather than just an observer," she replied. She proceeded to give me details about the bike, its features, engine, fairing, and so on. I simply watched her explain, mustering the courage to ask her out. I had already made up my mind to buy the bike. As she finished her sales pitch, I found myself still gazing at her. She blushed, and I snapped out of my trance. "I'll have a certified check for you tomorrow for the bike, but there's one condition: you must let me take you to dinner tonight or tomorrow. Otherwise, the deal is off," I said with a grin. She gave me a piercing look, then a small smile. "There's a new Italian place on Shore Drive that I've been wanting to try. Meet me there at 7 p.m., she replied. I agreed and shook her hand. It was the perfect balance of firmness and femininity. She looked stunning when she entered the restaurant. I had Googled which wine to pair with our dinner, so I felt quite confident. I briefly considered bringing flowers, but it felt too intimate. Mentally, I reminded myself to relax and just go with the flow. The meal was enjoyable, but the company was exceptional. 6 months had passed since her divorce was finalized, and she found herself reflecting on what she could have done differently. We met during law school and spent 20 years together, she shared with me. Suddenly, he began hitting the gym, splurging on expensive gadgets, getting hair implants, and having an affair with his secretary. Honestly, could a divorce embody any more cliches? She paused to take a sip of wine before continuing. They say hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, but let me tell you, a scorned woman who also happens to be an award-winning divorce attorney is far worse. I made sure to claim as many of those gadgets as possible. In the end, he was left with his Aston Martin, his mistress, and his law license. I had a good laugh when his mistress turned up pregnant. Since he was sterile, there was no way the child was his. She kicked him to the curb, and he came crawling back. I told him to get lost and put his motorcycle up for sale just to aggravate him even more. She still seemed upset with him, though I admired her resolve. It seemed like she recognized that once trust is lost, there's little else to salvage. As she composed herself, she greeted me with a lovely smile. "So, what's your story? Your accent suggests you're from the Midwest, but your truck's plates indicate you're now a South Carolina native. No wedding ring, no telltale mark of one either. I'll venture a guess, you're not married, probably divorced or widowed. Your truck hints at a decent job, but the fact you can afford a Harley outright suggests you see vehicles purely as utility. How am I doing?" she inquired. I grinned. "Pretty spot on. I manage Allied Steel's plant, so the job's decent. Been divorced for a year now, moved here from Michigan to escape memories of family and ex-wife. 2 kids in college. They keep in touch enough to cash the tuition checks. Love them, wish we connected more, but it's a two-way street. Besides that, not much else to tell," I confessed. Discussing all this on a first date felt odd, but I thought, why not? It was all true. She gave me a guarded look. "What's the biggest thing you miss about being married?" she inquired. I paused to consider. Not having someone to come home and share the day with. I really cherished the anticipation of spending time with my family, I answered. She burst into laughter. "I need to work on my flirting," she quipped. "You should have said that you missed the usual intimacy. Then I would say there's no reason to miss it if you found the right person. Then you would ask where to find such a lady, and I would say right here." I felt my cheeks flush. "In that case, I miss regular intimacy," I chuckled. "There's no need to miss it if you find the right woman," she replied, a mischievous glint in her eye. "Where would I find such a lady?" I played along. "Right on cue," she leaned forward, subtly emphasizing her curves. "Right here," she whispered softly. On the way to her place, I stopped at a gas station and bought a package of protection. When I got the message that the door was open, I went inside. I noticed her skirt on the floor and a pair of tights near the stairs. A trail of clothes led me to a door that appeared to be her bedroom. When I opened it, I found her lying on a large bed. Without hesitation, I took the opportunity, and we spent a pleasant evening together. I woke up in the middle of the night and realized that it was exactly midnight. I went to the toilet and crawled back under the covers. I pulled her to me. "Thank you for that," she murmured, meeting my gaze. I couldn't help but chuckle. "Seriously, whenever you want, just let me know," I replied with a grin. Her response was a playful smile in return. I really appreciate it, honestly. It's been tough lately with the divorce and all the challenges that come with being newly single. Plus, I'm preparing for my move back. I just needed some intimate connection and comfort. "Do you think I'm being too demanding?" she inquired. "Not at all. I completely understand. I'm just not sure about the etiquette in this situation. I like you. I enjoyed our time together. I'd like to see you again, but if you're not interested, I get it. How soon are you moving?" I asked. "I have to be in Boston in 4 weeks. That's one reason I wanted to sell the Harley. I'll be really busy though, so I won't have much free time," she explained. I sensed she had gotten what she needed and wasn't keen on a repeat. It stung a bit, but not terribly. I had a night of good company and intimacy. How could that be a bad thing? I flashed her a smile. "I understand. I'll Uber over tomorrow to pick up the bike." "I hope your move goes smoothly," I said, reaching for my clothes. Oh my God, I should have expressed myself more clearly. I feel like my thoughts are getting confused from being close. I'm not saying I don't want to see you anymore. I mean, I can't have a relationship because I'm leaving in a month, she muttered, burying her face in the pillow. Turning her over, I started kissing her. "Then let's make the most of these next few weeks and enjoy each other," I assured her. She smiled and nodded before falling asleep. I got dressed and kissed her on the forehead before leaving. When I returned home, I was greeted by Letitia, who seemed to be waiting for me. "I have an important test tomorrow, and I could use some help tonight," she said, taking off her shirt with a mischievous smile. Caught off guard, I muttered, Sure. What are you studying?" "Let's just call it anatomy," she replied playfully, pulling me closer. Panic seized me. "Tish, can you help me with something first?" I blurted out, but it was too late. I was afraid that I had made a mistake. She burst out laughing. "Oh, you little man, you were busy tonight. Tell me the details," she said. "That's not going to happen, baby. Just know that she's recently divorced and needs some help," I replied. Letitia gave me an impatient look. "Did you use protection?" she asked. "Yes," I replied. "Do you think you have another round in stock?" she asked. I chuckled. "God knows I'll try," I said. "Let me go take a shower, and then we'll see." "No," she exclaimed. "Okay, I'm a 47-year-old man who can't do this." Letitia seemed to be in a strange mood. I decided not to stop there. It led to the most incredible intimacy I've ever had in my 47 years. I almost fainted when we were done. We took a quick shower, then went back to bed, and she snuggled up to me. After thinking a little about what a strange turn my life had taken, I eventually fell asleep. The next morning, I went to pick up my bike, and Connie seemed a little worried. "Okay, Joe, I don't usually have one-night stands, but I'm in a good mood right now," she told me. I smiled at her. "A one-night stand is not my type either, but if it looks like last night, I might change my mind," I replied. "Have you ever thought about moving to Boston?" she asked. I grinned and kissed her. "No, I'm tired of the cold. I've been through enough winters in Michigan to know that I prefer sunlight," I replied. She blushed. "That must have sounded weird, right?" She laughed a little bit. I grinned along with her. But seriously, we'll have a lot more meetings before you leave, and then you can go to Boston, find some guy in his early 20s, and teach him what you like. Just don't get too serious with him because I expect you to only fool around with me when you come back here on business or vacation. I'm being damn playful right now, she said, pouting charmingly. We were standing in her garage. When I went to close the garage door, she looked at me curiously, then her eyes widened as she realized my intentions. After finishing, she turned around and kissed me. It was one of the most exciting sensations I've ever experienced. Heck, why didn't we meet 6 months ago? She asked. 6 months ago, I wouldn't have been ready, I explained. I was still going through my divorce back then. I was so infuriated by everything masculine that I could snap at you, she remarked, pulling on her pants. So let's put it down to the wrong moment and enjoy the moment, I suggested. I agree, she replied, her eyes narrowed. You're dating someone else, aren't you? If you have a girlfriend, I'll find out and let her know what kind of person you are, she said angrily. I looked at her. Get off me. I don't have a girlfriend, but I have a friend who has privileges. She's a sweet girl, and none of us want anything serious. But if you think I'm the kind of guy you can fool around with, maybe we should break up right now, I replied coldly. She glared back at me. I wish you a pleasant life, I told her, starting the motorcycle. Women are complex creatures. Letitia found humor in my situation. Look, Joe, you need to learn how to handle these scenarios. I can't give you specific advice because every woman is unique. My friends and I are comfortable with a friends with benefits arrangement, but some women may not be. It might be a generational thing. You're like a rare find for us, the unicorn comment made me raise an eyebrow. I speak broadly, but at this stage of our lives, we need someone who treats us well, takes care of us, satisfies our needs, but does not become intrusive. Rhonda could call you to blow off some steam, and you'd go with her, ensure her safety and enjoyment, then return and spend the night together. She wouldn't worry about making you jealous or being stalked on Facebook. If she declined something, she'd know you'd respect her decision. You wouldn't boast, you'd treat her the same as always. Am I right? Well, yeah, but Rhonda's a fantastic person. This should be the time of her life when she's out experiencing things. I can tell you from experience that the house and the white picket fence come with a price, I replied. She looked at me with curiosity. Are you suggesting you wish you had done things differently? She asked. I pondered it briefly before responding. Yes and no. I cherish my children and the family life I had, but in hindsight, I question if it was all worthwhile. Despite working tirelessly and prioritizing my wife and kids, I find myself now as a 47-year-old divorced father who hasn't spoken to his children in 6 months. I had envisioned Carol and I continuing for a few years after the kids left, then settling down, buying a small place, and traveling. But then she had that affair with a jerk. After that, it was all about holding our family together for the sake of the kids. I thought I had moved on, but clearly, that's not the case. From the age of 20 until about a year ago, I had a clear sense of direction. Now I feel adrift. I mean, I've had encounters with a young 20-something and a 40-year-old MILF on the same night. That kind of thing only happens in letters to Penthouse, I replied. So wander around for a bit, Joe, she advised. You're 47, not 97. There's nothing wrong with exploring your life. I've told you before to get out and do things, and that still holds true. It won't be with me for the next 6 weeks because I have clinicals to attend upstate, but get out of your head and enjoy life for a while. Here's an idea, say yes to everything you can for the next month and see what happens. You need to discover what you're searching for. Also, I'll likely have a lot of built-up energy to release when I return, so if you don't mind keeping that weekend open, I'll make it worth your while. I couldn't resist returning her smile. I planted a kiss on her lips and gave her a playful squeeze as she headed off to pack. She truly was my closest companion at the moment. Even if we weren't romantically involved, she would still be the one I turned to for guidance. I paused for a moment to reflect on my feelings for her. I cared deeply for her, that much was certain, but I wasn't romantically in love with her. I knew she would eventually meet someone amazing, and when she did, I would genuinely be happy for her. Until then, I decided to let her be my mentor and heed her advice. 2 weeks later, my phone rang. Recognizing the number, I answered. "The woman you bought the bike from," came the voice. Faced with a choice, I decided to be friendly. "Hey, Connie, how are you?" I said brightly. I could sense her relief as she exhaled deeply. "Joe, I owe you an apology for how I acted last time. It took me a while to calm down and realize you did nothing wrong. I guess I'm still sensitive about the divorce," she rushed out. "I understand completely. It's been a while since I've had to navigate these waters myself," I chuckled. "Things have certainly changed," she agreed. "I'm still moving to Boston, but there's a mandatory awards banquet and farewell party next Saturday. My ex will be there, and I'd like to have a charming companion by my side. The company covers everything, all you have to do is show up and be my date for a few hours. We can make a weekend of it, or you can leave after the awards. Would you please accompany me?" "I'd be delighted, Connie, but there's just one thing," I replied. I double-checked if my door was closed. "What is it?" she asked. "If I'm going to spend the weekend with an attractive woman in a luxurious hotel room, you have to be prepared for me to do whatever I want for hours on end. Does this meet your expectations?" I asked, wondering. If I had jeopardized my invitation, there was a long silence, and I began to feel uncomfortable. Just when I was about to withdraw my statement, she spoke again in a low voice. "You can't say such things right before a meeting. I'm going to meet with the client." Hearing this, I couldn't contain my excitement. "I'm going to go to a few shops, and you're going to have an unforgettable weekend, buddy." "I have to go, but I'll text you the details," she said before hanging up. We had a great time together. She must have spent money on underwear when we found out that her ex was staying in the same hotel room. She hurriedly put on a swimsuit, and we went to the pool. She pointed at him, even though I would have noticed him anyway. It was the guy who was staring at us intently, with a small paunch and receding hairline. His tribal tattoo looked out of place on his pale, undeveloped shoulders. As I swam up to the bar, I caught several glances from other women. Suddenly, I felt someone pressing against my back, and a hand began to touch my shorts, while the other reached for a drink. I turned to kiss Connie and took her hand off my shorts. "Let's finish these drinks and go back to the room," I said, not embarrassed. Connie's friends erupted in cheers as she downed her drink, her face flushing red. Passing by her ex, we refused to glance back. The awards ceremony was dull, yet my companion was extraordinary. We danced until dawn, and then we embraced intimately. After tidying the apartment, I settled with a glass of scotch to reflect. My bond with Connie was exactly what I wanted, friends with benefits. Letitia fell into the same category. Initially shrugging off their remarks about me being a fling, I realized Letitia's friends were all about casual enjoyment. Surprisingly, I was okay with that. It dawned on me that I hadn't been contemplating a long-term commitment. What really troubled me was my quest to discover my true self. Motorcycling was an epiphany. I savored the liberation of the open road. I resolved to try skydiving once and grow a beard, despite Carol's dislike for facial hair. I only needed to please myself now. A tattoo idea surfaced. I remembered a design with a compass rose and anchor I'd seen years ago. I had dismissed it then, but now, why not? Another decision made over whiskey was to reignite my passion for hiking and camping. I loved it in my youth, And though Carol indulged me when we first married, it was never her thing. Chuckling at the notion that this might be a classic midlife crisis, I didn't mind. For the first time in years, I felt genuinely optimistic about the future. There was so much to look forward to. Thank you to everyone who took the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed them, please consider liking and subscribing if you haven't already. Feel free to share your thoughts on these events in the comments below. Take care.